in America.
How excited are you to go back to Chicago for All Out now? Because one would assume you're at All In last year.
I was there.
And All In was a big reason, I think, why All Elite Wrestling came to fruition.
I mean, to be honest, I conceived the idea of All Elite Wrestling and the idea, like I say, if you look at this, in July, it was over a year before we did this show, I had actually put a layout together of like what I thought Daly's Place could look like, how you could dress it up. And this episode of South Park, I think it was called WTF, the World Takedown Federation, right? So yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about it for a really long time, and I think that the success of All In just maybe really reinforced what I already believed to be true, that there was a market for this, and that there was an opportunity, and that with the right network partner, with the right media partner, it could be done, and not just the right media partners domestically. We have the best media partner you could ever ask for domestically with Warner Media, TNT, BR Live. But also, I mean, the history of wrestling there is great, but what we have going on with ITV, and I'd like to continue that partnership, hopefully, and I think there's a really good opportunity from everything we've been talking about there, which has been another benefit of spending a lot of time in London, I think. They have a great history of wrestling as well, and I think, we have a great relationship, and I think that can continue too. So, again, ITV in England has one of the richest histories in wrestling, TNT in America has one of the richest histories, and I think other countries too that have a good history of wrestling on TV, you'll see us getting really good media partners. And again, so a long time out, I kind of saw this coming, but certainly I was at All In. I'm a friend of the family's. Cody was here with his mom. I was sitting with her, and I was sitting with the Massies, and just kind of laying low with friends of the family and enjoying the show. But I absolutely, it means a lot to go back, and it's cool because it's like a home and home. I mean, with the 3 shows, it's pretty cool because Daytona's right down the road, and then we're here, and then I am from Champaign, Illinois. I'm from Illinois, and so many countless of my friends from home are from Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg. So my college roommate lives like 15 minutes from the Sears Center. I stayed at his house with his baby last year, and so I really I appreciate you asking. So it's another home after this. It's another homecoming for me.
A little follow-up question.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure if you can really answer the question yet, but we were talking about going to TNT. When you get more pay-per-views, how is that model going to work?
It's hard. It's a really complex question. I think I have an idea, and I don't want to roll anything out, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But it's a good question. There will be pay-per-views. Right now we're doing roughly. It's not exactly spaced out month apart, but effectively, there's a pay-per-view in May, Double or Nothing, and then there are pay-per-view level shows in June and July with Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen, and then now big, huge pay-per-view coming up, as you referenced, All Out, August 31st, and so. That's rough, one per each month, and I think that's a good rhythm, but I think we have shows like Double or Nothing and All Out that are at the very highest level, and you'll see with All Out, Double or Nothing I think set the bar really high, and I was really, a lot of you guys were there, I think most of you guys were, and it set the bar very high, and it was, I think, a really critically acclaimed wrestling pay-per-view. There was also a very commercially successful pay-per-view, and also established a lot of things, like right out of the gate that I find really interesting, because look, when I got into this, one of the things I was hoping is that in the market for a second wrestling company, that there was enough of that there was enough there, and that we had enough, that we had a chance to basically pick up where WCW left off. I was really hoping we could pick up where WCW left off, and I would have been really happy to pick up doing maybe a little better, but numbers like they were doing when they ended off. And I figured, well, if we can just get back to where when WCW ended, we could pick up and do what a great thing this would be for wrestling. The fact is, the numbers we did on pay-per-view, over 100,000 pay-per-view buys. I don't think any WCW show did that in the last 8 months of the company after Hulk Hogan walked out. They never did. So after Hulk Hogan walked out, they never did 100,000 buys the last 8 months they were in business. So we're not just, and on pay-per-views, we're not just to where they were at the end. We're to where they were well before the end. And then when you look at live attendance, I don't think there was a WCW show that did 10,000 after Spring Stampede at the United Center. Yeah, United Center of April of 2000. So that's almost a year, 11 months before the company went into business. So the last 11 months out of WCW, they didn't do any gates over 10,000 live paid. We're doing 2 now in our first 4 shows, and the other, the other 2 weren't even set up for that. But I think, I do think absolutely, we have a great chance to do something special. And as far as the number of pay-per-views, I'm not sure what the right number is, but I do know there's going to be shows that are going to be longer, where there's going to be more behind them. And I think you'll see that. And the audience, it's not just me picking those shows. It's natural selection. You'll see. I think there's going to be a StarCast 3 in Chicago. And it's going to be a really special weekend. And there's going to be a lot happening there. But the right number of pay-per-views, I don't know the exact number for you right now, but we won't cram I want to give people the amount of wrestling they want to see, so we need to pick like the perfect number. And I think you don't want to oversaturate, and that's one of the things we're trying to be really careful of doing here with the weekly TV, with what I expect to be a 2-hour weekly TV show that I've been pretty consistent about wanting to do, and not a lot more than that, if any. And pay-per-view wise, it's definitely, I could see why people would be concerned. Like, just too much is not a good thing when it comes to pay-per-view.
Tony, as far as talent goes and people working behind the scenes even in the company, are you comfortable right now with how many people you have hired, talent, and also those working in the office?
Yeah, we have a great group in the office. I mean, there's somebody who's going to add a tremendous value, then I'm always looking for somebody that's going to make this a better company, and I think people like that are come available. But at this time, we have a great group, and I'm really happy about where we are in terms of not just in terms of the staff and the wrestling roster. I think we have a great top to bottom company right now, so I feel really good about where we're at. I think we've done a great job building, and we just have to keep producing really good shows like the 3 we've done so far. But I'm glad you asked. I think it's really good where we're at, not just from a wrestling perspective, but a staffing perspective too. The people in the office are great.
Tony, you mentioned a lot of you guys mentioned about it being like a sport. You want it more sports-oriented kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anything more that you want to implement that you haven't really gotten a chance to yet without having a television deal or having the TV?
Yeah, I think like we talked about the tag team tournament, and it won't be the only. I think that certainly that is something I'm really focused on, and right out of the gate, I think that'll be one of the key focuses. If not in the first episode of TV, certainly in the very early stages, and in October, you'll see our weekly TV shows will be focused. When we get to the fall, you'll see a heavy focus on this tag team tournament, and I think that that's similar to what you see in sports with playoffs. There'll be a similar format, and I think now there's going to be a match it all out to determine who gets the bye in the first round, and I think there'll be a lot of interest in that too. It's a great opportunity, and I think people will be interested in that tournament because I've seen a lot of people saying that they think we have a great tag team scene, one of the best tag team scenes, and to me, I think it is one of the best tag team scenes, and that's not by accident. Something everything's by design here, and for the most part, and I think that's one thing we've put a lot of emphasis on is tag team wrestling. So that's certainly one element of the sporting presentation, and there'll be a lot more of those to come.
Cool.
Is there you guys have a?
One last question. So there's a lot of fans here that come to these shows that are just not happy with the other product, but there's a lot of I know a couple guys that are watching that haven't watched wrestling in years.
Yeah.
So how many of those fans make up the buys and get attendance on?
I think we've seen there's some stuff that's been publicly available. I think we've definitely as I've talked about the lapsed fan, we've definitely woken up some old lapsed fans, people that hadn't watched wrestling in a long time, to your point. And I'm not surprised to hear you say that. I mean, the data is really positive because there's like towns where wrestling's been strong that aren't necessarily the biggest towns, but we're doing really well in those towns, but we're also doing really well in just the biggest towns. I mean, in all the biggest markets, they're not just we did big numbers because they're big towns, but we also did above average per viewer in all the biggest markets, you name them. And that's really bodes really well for us, not just in terms of we're going to be successful, we're going to do big ratings, but now for advertisers, that's really valuable. And I hope we gave people a show they can really hang their hat on. And again, this is probably more along the lines of what you'll see from a TV show from us in terms of pushing the line, because I mean, look, it's a great wrestling product, and I don't want to give people something that they feel isn't exciting. I felt like we did a really, really exciting show, and in a 2-hour live TV format, I think that's similar. Maybe on TV you could even push the envelope a little more, but I wouldn't. Like I said, there's a difference between what we did at some of the stuff at Fyter Fest, what you might do in a lights out hardcore match, and what you do, on TNT and primetime weekly. So it's a good question for sure. So.
No.
You have anything? It seemed like you looked like you had something.
Chris is always ready.
You always look ready to go, Chris. You look.
Actually, just one last thing, because when I walked across the way here, I saw a stadium, and it was an empty stadium. But I was thinking in my head, what would happen if an AEW event happened in Jacksonville at this big stadium? Do you have long-term goals where this is where I want this?
Yeah, it would be amazing. I think there would be. Jacksonville's a great place to visit, and I think people would. There's a great number of people in Jacksonville. There's a lot of fans and a lot of local people tonight. But I imagine if we did that, we'd be accommodating a lot of people, because it's no secret that our shows and All In beforehand would do a lot of fly-in business, and a lot of people fly from all over the world to see our shows, and I think it would be really cool to bring a lot of outside people to Jacksonville and have a mix of like the local people who really love AEW and the Jaguars and what we do here at TIAA Bank Stadium and Daly's Place. But I also think it would be like awesome, to have all those people kind of come here and see it and want to come back more. So yeah, I would love it. I would like to, it's more likely we'll probably do another show in Daly's Place before we use the stadium. But yeah, it's a great venue for sure, and I love, it would be very nice for me, and it would mean a lot to me if we could do it.
Tony, there's been, over the course of the few pay-per-views, there's been a few multi-person matches a lot of the time. Is that in regards to just trying to showcase a lot of the talent more so, and you want to get a lot of the storytelling and through that regard to get people on the show?
It's a mix, and also I
Yeah.
think like you can also, like you just said, you can build a lot of stories. Like like if you look at the 6-man tag with like Joey Janela and Darby Allin and Jimmy Havoc and versus MJF, Sean Spears, and Sammy Guevara, like there's so many different combinations of things. I want to see a Joey Janela Sammy Guevara match from the Death Valley Driver on the apron. You could replay that clip, and that's a match intro right there on a show, and that's a match I want to see. That just out of that sixer, and it's not. There's so many others, not just on the teams, the guys against each other, but within the teams and what's going on. And I think there's a bunch of issues in that one, and so with all the multi-person matches, yeah, it is by design. You'd like to feature a lot of people, but also it creates the ability when we're going into TV, we have a lot of different situations that are live, interesting deals that we can go back to. And I think like there's a lot of issues right now that are like unresolved, which is awesome. And the more unresolved issues we have, the more potential great matches. And we have like this awesome roster of people. I want to see all those matches, and I think people do too. So yeah, that's good. But thanks for asking. I think that it's a really logical question, but I think it's kind of both.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody got anything? That's great. Well, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you guys